Hello again, everyone. It's great seeing you again, and thanks for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather on the second day of May 2021. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got, let me get the cursor on the right side there, right monitor, there we go, left monitor actually. The Alaska breakup map here showing, of course, the tripod tipped at Nanana Friday evening on the 30th of April, so ice is out there, but still upstream you can see mostly ice upstream from there, and then farther eastward there, just north of the Alaska Range, you can see some open to an area of mostly open. Yukon River still looks pretty solid all the way down from the border right on down to the Delta. Of course, some rivers up there to the north are pretty iced up, and starting to see some breakup. Well, of course, pretty good opening up there along the Copper River, and a little bit in the Susitna Valley. It's a Susitna River with the Little Sioux seeing a little bit more. Anyway, moving on to the hazardous weather graphic, another non-illuminated set of maps here with no watches, warnings, or advisories out anywhere for the state for the next day or several days, actually. Although we do have a pretty good system coming in far western Aleutians, western Bering, gale force winds in that area tomorrow, and then we'll have gale force winds coming into the spreading into the southeast Bering, eastern Aleutians on Tuesday. So, but that's we'll get to that later. On the chart today, you can see still clouds and some isolated shower activity, nothing too heavy. Ketchikan picked up about 0.15 of an inch in the last 12 hours, but that ended actually at around 5 a.m. I believe. So really it's been dry day down there, although there were some light showers around Wrangell being reported. And it's kind of really isolated and scattered across the remainder of the panel, but not a bad day there. So a little bit of clearing, mostly cloudy, winds on the light side, and basically the rain is shut off. Bristol Bay seeing some clearing there on the lee side of the Aleutian Range with the winds coming over the mountains there. Also east side Kodiak Island, west side, or I'm sorry, the west side, Shelikof side straight of Kodiak Island had some clearing. The east side picked up some moisture today. Let's see, I think 0.15 of an inch fell with some rain, occasional rain and clouds there at Kodiak State Airport, but that got heavier in that band across the Alaska Peninsula. False Pass picked up an inch of rain in the last 12 hours, while Cold Bay had about half an inch, so pretty kind of concentrated area of heavier precipitation there, and that definitely was the heaviest in the state today. Otherwise, a lot of clear skies up eastern interior, into the Copper River Basin, into northern Cook Inlet, the Susitna Valley, and right on down the Yukon River Valley area there into the Brooks Range. Pick up some clouds up there on the north slope, and also, but some clearing there, even on the eastern Arctic coast. You can see the ice up there through the clouds, and also the northern Bering Sea. A little bit of light snow persisting today, and kind of breezy for St. Lawrence Island, and gusty winds extending southward there, actually coming out of the northwest gusts 50 miles an hour at Falls Pass, one of the stronger winds gusts, only topped by Cape Newenham with a east wind gusting to 51 miles per hour today. And Cold Bay saw 40 miles an hour, and Akulski 42 miles an hour. And the southwest interior areas are seeing winds gusting 25 to as high as 40 miles an hour today. Kind of a breezy afternoon in the southwest interior. Showers out over the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians, improving, ending there as you head west. And then you can see the clouds, the cirrus shield there with the next system coming in. Oh, it's still way off the chart there, but increasing clouds there in the far western part of the satellite imagery. On the chart today, we've got high pressure building in advance of that system and behind the one over the eastern Bering Sea. So high pressure, some clearing skies, light winds for the western Aleutians there. Start picking up the showers a little bit for Atka, and more so into the eastern Aleutians there, seeing some shower activity, Pribilofs on down, I guess a heavier precipitation over the Alaska Peninsula, on up to Kodiak Island, again, but not that heavy. A little bit of moisture for the North Gulf Coast, but nothing significant. And moving on to forecast for tonight, you can see if that next front pushes an increasing chance of rain into the southern southeast coast, stays unsettled, damp, Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, southeast Bering Sea actually, dry up over the interior with just about no wind at all for the Arctic coast and North Slope, and almost no wind at all here for southern Alaska, the lack of gradient. And for tomorrow, there's that next system bringing the gale force winds into the western Aleutians, high pressure, light winds, and dry conditions, Adak and Atka, moving into the central Bering Sea, but still breezy and occasionally wet for the eastern Aleutians, occasionally wet for the Alaska Peninsula to Kodiak Island, but winds much lighter to not a factor at all in the winds in those areas. Even the North Gulf Coast of that next front stays mostly cloudy and showery for the Panhandle tomorrow, with the main precipitation area still off the coast. That next front, not all that strong, but they'll move through and wash out, and then another trough will keep the showers going or increase them again some point in the day Tuesday as the other one washes out. And some of that moisture lifts up into southern Alaska with that front. So looking for maybe some periods of rain there for the eastern North Gulf Coast, Cordova to Yakutat, down to Elfin Cove, otherwise showers, Prince William Sound, Copper River Basin, mostly cloudy, chance of showers, same thing south central Alaska into Bristol Bay, and more light rain in store for Kodiak Island with that front just to your south, and some showers there along and just north of the Alaska Range possible with mostly cloudy skies, mostly sunny farther to the north, and then an Arctic trough there clipping the eastern Beaufort Sea coast with a little bit of light snow and fog conditions, and that front weakening significantly as it pushes in toward the central Aleutians. And for the lows for tonight, for the Panhandle, not too bad. Upper 30s to lower 40s, and upper 20s for the Susitna Valley. Otherwise 30s south central Alaska near 40 around Homer and Kodiak. Mid 20s Copper River Basin. Mid 30s Bristol Bay. Upper 20s lower 30s for the Kuskokwim Valley. Tanana Valley, 25 to 33 for your lows. Upper Yukon, Kobuk, Koyukuk Valley in the 20s. Lower teens for the Brooks Range. Single numbers for the Arctic Coast North Slope. And 12 at Shishmaref, 28 Nome, 25 at Gamble. And off to the south there, 31 at St. Paul. Lower to mid 30s for the Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula. Highs for tomorrow in the 50s. Lower to mid for the just about all southern Alaska. Upper 40s, lower 50s for the Panhandle. Lower 40s for Kodiak Island. And near 50 for Bristol Bay. 50 to 55 in the Kuskokwim Valley. And for the interior, temperatures not too bad there in the greater Fairbanks area to Eielson Air Force Base Northway, Delta Junction, 55 to 60 for the highs, mid-50s for the Kuskokwim Valley, 20s to mid-30s Brooks Range, in the 20s for the North Slope and the Arctic Coast, with 20s all the way down to St. Lawrence Island, and upper 30s to near 40 or into the lower 40s for the Bering Sea, Aleutians, and Alaska Peninsula. And then for the lows Tuesday morning, 30s southern Alaska, near 40 for the Panhandle, and 25 to 35 central interior, teens from the Brooks Range of the Arctic Coast, and near 20 St. Lawrence Island. 30s lower to mid for the Aleutians and Bering Sea. Highs on Tuesday, 50s southern Alaska, near 50 or 50 to 55 for the Panhandle. 55 to 60 again central interior. In the 20s up over the Arctic Coast and North Slope. And upper 20s again, St. Lawrence Island, upper 30s for the Pribilofs. And then looking at lower 40s there for the Aleutians to about the Alaska Peninsula, then goes to the 45 to 50 degree range up toward Bristol Bay.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to the first line weather graphic for Monday, you can see from the Brooks Range out to the Arctic Coast, across the North Slope, IFR, and some IFR down from Cape Lisburne Point Hope down to Shishmaref and into the Seward Peninsula, and almost into the Selawik Valley. Marginal VFR south side of the Seward Peninsula. More IFR, St. Lawrence Island, Yukon Delta, Nunivak Island down near the Pribilofs, and just off the southwest coast, across the Alaska Peninsula, back up around Kodiak Island into Shelikof Strait. Marginal VFR. Barren Islands, Kamishak, Kachemak Bay, and VFR for Cook Inlet with some marginal VFR. Western Cook Inlet to the eastern slopes of western Alaska Range, and some areas of marginal VFR over the southeast interior, south of the Alaska Range, otherwise VFR and north of the mountains there to the across the Yukon Flats. Marginal VFR with a little bit of IFR for the Panhandle. And the Bering Sea, Aleutians, marginal VFR, IFR showing up around Shemya with that next system late tonight. And moving on to tonight, we'll see that that IFR out there advances across Shemya and two islands, but not quite getting to Kiska. IFR Pribilof, St. Matthew Island, becoming VFR St. Lawrence Island, Seward Peninsula. Lingering IFR there on the north slope to the north side of the Brooks Range, and marginal for the Arctic Coast. Pretty much VFR in the interior as you head south of the Alaska Range and toward Bristol Bay, picking up the marginal VFR. A little bit of IFR yet around Kodiak Island and over toward the border of the Panhandle, otherwise marginal VFR for the Gulf of Alaska, Prince William Sound, and coastal areas of the Panhandle. And then for Tuesday morning, IFR continues to advance eastward in toward ADAC now, westward to probably the Komondorskis and the northern Bering Sea, including the Pribilofs, right up to the southwest coast to IFR. Marginal VFR from Atka across Nunavik and Unalaska Island, Alaska Peninsula. Some IFR and marginal conditions, Kodiak Island. And northern Cook Inlet, pretty much VFR, but a lot more marginal VFR in the chart here with IFR. Some areas of IFR, especially the North Gulf Coast, there for the area south of the Alaska Range, and that IFR covers just about all the Panhandle, IFR North Slope to the Arctic coast. And for the afternoon, marginal VFR, North Slope Arctic coast, little band of IFR near the Brooks Range, lots of IFR out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, save the Fox Islands, they'll be marginal in the Alaska Peninsula. IFR right along the southwest coast, kind of drifting in from Cape Newton into Kuskokwim Bay. Northern Bering Sea or St. Lawrence Island, Norton Sound. VFR, marginal VFR with some VFR over southern Alaska south of the Alaska Range. About that same pattern, but more of the VFR in the central interior, marginal for the Panhandle. And the Tuvik IFR to start becomes VFR, trending better throughout the afternoon. Adigan, just go VFR. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR becomes VFR, and rainy, marginal VFR becoming VFR as well. Windy though, VFR start to finish tomorrow. Isabel occasionally marginal throughout the entire day. I don't think it'll be solid marginal VFR for the entire day, but at times. Same forecast from Antasta. Tanita, marginal, improving, better flying conditions, less clouds, higher ceilings throughout the afternoon. And Portage, VFR becomes marginal VFR, just the reverse of Tanita. Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR becomes IFR. And moving on to the freezing levels, 2,000 feet, central southern interior, up to about 4,000 there, east of Kodiak Island to near Yakutat into the northern Panhandle, and around 2,000 or around 2,000 or a little less out over the Bering Sea with the surface there, northern Bering Sea. And as far as icing goes, we've got areas of light to isolated, very isolated, moderate, rime or mixed icing in that band there along the North Gulf Coast. Some of that slipping up in the Prince William Sound, just a threat though, into the Panhandle. And the more active area, or more significant icing threat is coming in with that next system way out there to the west, just pushing into Shimianatu. And the jet stream, northwest, 125 knots to 155 knots across central Aleutians with the ridging ahead of that next system. Otherwise pretty light with the jet stream south of the Panhandle. And at 9,000 feet, we've got, again, the strongest wind south of the area there with maybe 55 knots south of western Aleutians. Moving on to 3,000 feet, picking up some winds now across the Fox Islands, eastern Aleutians, 45 to 55 knots, southern Bering Sea, and then 50 to 65 knot winds from the south coming in just ahead of that active front with the next system near Kamchatka Peninsula, 25 to 30 knots, up to 45 knots there, southern Alaska Peninsula. Turbulence-wise, look for moderate chop there, Shimianatu, and probably areas just east of Atka to Unalaska Island, otherwise light to isolated moderate chop, Kodiak Island, North Gulf Coast.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Carrie Haisley, Chief of the Emergency Services and Multimedia Branch for the National Weather Service in Anchorage. With me today I have Dr. Doug Wesley, a physical scientist for the National Weather Service Alaska Region Headquarters. Doug, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome, Carrie. Hello.
Hello. So you're here to talk to us a little bit about something called AKwx, which is the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network. And I understand that AKwx is a network of volunteers who take weather observations. Can you tell us a little bit more about what AKwx is?
Yes, it began in the lower 48, 20 some years ago, and it's expanded during those 2 decades. They're getting something like 10 to 15,000 rainfall reports per day from the lower 48.
Wow, that's a lot of different reports. So how many reports do we get in Alaska right now?
Well, it varies, maybe 10 to 25. But if you consider the large areas we're talking about, we have a lot of gaps to fill. Any observation is better than no observation, but there are large areas in Alaska. Alaska covers 3 million square miles. There's a lot of data gaps in that space, so we'd like to enhance it.
Sure. So tell us then a bit about why these observations are so important to Alaska and why we need to expand the number of them that we're getting.
Yes, Alaska, as you know, has large areas with a lot of complex terrain, and there are no weather observing stations or radar. So CoCoRaHS can help fill the data gaps, so you can at least get some idea of what's actually falling from the sky at those locations. CoCoRaHS increases the amount of timely weather observations available to meteorologists and other decision makers, especially in hazardous type of weather, both rain and snow and the occasional hailstorm that we get up here. CoCoRaHS observations can help forecasters identify long-term precipitation and snowfall trends in a climate sense. And just overall, they increase the amount of timely weather observations available to the public.
So then let's talk a little bit about each of the different types of observations. So it's the rain, hail, and snow network. So let's start by talking a little bit about rain observations and tell us a little bit about how you take those and how long it takes a volunteer to get a rain observation.
Okay, this is a 4-inch gauge, just the basic gauge, which you use for both rain and snowfall. But the rain observations are pretty quick. It's a matter of 2 to 3 minutes that each volunteer goes out and takes a reading, and then they enter these on the computer, and they're immediately available for observation on the computer and on the maps, so that you can see your report. In the wintertime, it's a little bit more complicated. We require the observers to measure not only the snow accumulation, but also liquid equivalent. So they've got to melt the snowfall. This involves 2 of these gauges and a snowboard. And it's, it's maybe a 10-minute observation per day during the winter. But the snowfall is so variable that even across town and in especially the remote areas, it's crucial that we increase this number of snow observations in the network.
Right. I understand that we can only take observations in places where we have weather service offices. And so we rely on all of these volunteers to help us fill gaps. And it's also interesting to know how snowfall varies across like large spaces or even small cities. So I notice here in Anchorage, for example, we can have a vastly different amount of snow on the east side of town and the west side of town. And so it seems like these observations would help us to better understand what's going on in places besides just where the office is.
That's correct. In any given snowfall, there are typically large variances, as you know, and we rely on reports from the public and from National Weather Service cooperative spotters to map out the snowfall that occurs so that we can predict it better in the future.
Sure. So we talked about rain observations and we talked about snow observations. And you said for each of those, if it's rain, it only takes a couple minutes, and then it can take about 10 minutes if it's snow. Hail was the other one that we didn't talk about yet. Tell us just a little bit about the hail observations that CoCoRaHS observers take.
Yeah, the CoCoRaHS network, it has a hail pad, and it's just a simple block of styrofoam covered with aluminum foil, and you can approximate the size of hail by measuring the dent that the hail causes on the pad. And this can give us an estimate of hail size. We don't get hail very often in Alaska, but I've seen it 2 or 3 times in my 5 years in Anchorage, and some of it up to a ½ inch. And I'm sure there's been larger hail up in the interior at times.
So let's talk a little bit about how these rain, hail, and snow observations can help forecasters. So we have people who forecast the weather, and we also have people who work on the hydrology side. And I can see that maybe CoCoRaHS will be beneficial to both of them. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, it's beneficial to the hydrologic forecaster who's concerned about flooding, and rainfall comprises one of the causes of a flood, or it can exacerbate high water conditions. So the more the hydrologist has to look at in terms of data from recent rainfall, the more information they have to work with when they're generating a forecast. The weather forecasters in the wintertime at the Weather Service office can use these observations also to help with past case studies, to verify model data, and to get a handle on what's actually happening out the window. And that's important in the forecast process.
Yeah, it seems like you can never have too much information when you're issuing a forecast. So it only takes a few minutes most of the time to take these observations. So let's say I'm interested in becoming a volunteer for CocoRaz. How do I get involved?
Yeah, the website is very useful, cocoraz.org, and it has a number of video-based training tutorials that take you right on from measuring rainfall to a video tutorial on measuring snowfall. It has the maps available in real time, and you can go back and look at that old data too through those maps. And so it's a very useful, comprehensive website.
Very interesting. And anybody can get involved, right? You don't have to be a meteorologist.
That's right. And, we love to have 24, once a day reports throughout the year, but if you can't, then so be it. And we have observers, some observers are out of town for periods of time, or maybe they can only report, a week or two of precipitation, but it's still useful. It's still data that we look at. So the more the better, but you can get involved even if you aren't at a location 24/7.
Doug, I really appreciate you coming on to our program today to talk about CocoRaz. Hopefully we can have you back in the studio at some point so we can talk more about it and then talk more about the different types of observations and the tools that observers use.
That would be great. Yeah.
So thank you for your time, and thank you so much for joining this edition of Alaska Weather Facts.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. Cook Inlet ice-free, and including Turnagain and Connect Arms now, and Bristol Bay pretty much ice-free. A little bit up there, extreme north, right up along the coast. Some thinner stuff left over, and continuing to open up there in Kuskokwim Bay and also along the southwest coast. It's south of St. Lawrence Island, ice-free, sea ice-free, south of Nunivak Island there in the swath, and slowly fading away there around St. Matthew Island and also in areas of Norton Sound. Coastal water forecasts shaping up like this for the Panhandle tomorrow. Light winds on the south coast, 15 to 20 knots from the south, 7 to 8 foot seas. Small craft advisories on the north coast, southeast 25 to 30 knots, seas around 11 feet. North 15, Lynn Canal, southeast 15, Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, southeast 20 knots with seas at 6 feet. Outlook for Tuesday, Clarence Strait still southeast winds at 20 and 15 knot winds for Stevens Passage out of the southeast, 15 knots Lynn Canal from the south, and west-southwest 15 knots with 8 foot seas on the south coast, and south 20 knots up there to the north with seas at 10 feet. Northern Cook Inlet, northeast winds tomorrow, 20 knots, seas 5 feet. Small craft advisory south of the Forelands, northerlies 25 knots there for southern Cook Inlet. Kamishak Bay, northeast at 30 knots. Barren Island, small craft advisories also with east winds at 30 knots. North Gulf Coast, east-northeast 25 knots, seas 10 feet. Prince William Sound, north at 15 knots. Those become even lighter for Prince William Sound on Tuesday. Southeast at 10, seas pretty slight at 2 feet. Cook Inlet, south 15 knots, 3 foot seas. Southeast 15 for Kamishak Bay. The Barren Islands, south 20, seas 8 feet, so still small craft advisories there, and southerlies at 15 with 8 foot seas for the western North Gulf Coast, west at 15 there on the east side. Prince William, I already mentioned Prince William Sound. Okay, Kodiak Island there, east side of Kodiak Island, southwest 30 knots, northeast 30 knots for Shelikof Strait, and from Sitkinak to Cape Sarachev. Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula, west winds 30 knots. Small craft advisories on the Bering Sea side as well, but only about 25 knots out of the west, 10 foot seas. Bristol Bay, northeast at 20 with 4 foot seas. North 20 for Bristol Bay on Tuesday. Small craft advisories again for the Alaska Peninsula, west turning northwest at 25 knots, 6 to 9 foot seas. Castle Cape to Sitkinak, winds will be east at 25 knots with 11 foot seas. South 25 on the east side of Kodiak Island, just 15 knots from the east for Shelikof Strait. Fox Islands tomorrow, good gale warnings in the forecast there. Westerlies 35 to 40 knots with seas 12 to near 20 feet. And small craft advisories, Adak and Atka, 25 to 30 knot west-northwest winds. South 20 from Sitka Island, and gales on the increase tomorrow, slowly pushing eastward. Shimei and Attu specifically for 35 knot winds, could go up to 40 knots by late in the afternoon. And for Tuesday, gale warnings now from Atka Island westward to Shimei and Attu from the south at 35 knots, seas 9 to 11 feet for Adak and Atka, and up to 17 feet there west of Kiska Island. And for Unmac Island, small craft advisories on the increase throughout the afternoon for south winds coming up to 30 knots, these building to 8 feet. On Alaska Island, southwest to 20. For the southwest coast, northeast winds 15 knots, north 20 knots for the Pribilofs, north 25 knots for St. Matthew Island, and northeast 25 for St. Lawrence Island. North 20 for St. Lawrence Island on Tuesday, and 15 knots from the northeast Yukon Delta coast, south of Nunivak Island, northwest to 20. Small craft advisories for the St. Matthew Island area, east 25, and for the Pribilofs, south winds 20 knots, 5-foot seas. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east winds 10 to 15 knots, and the central and west side, northeast 5 to 15 knots. Not too bad wind-wise, but from Cape Beaufort down to Wales, northerlies to 20 knots. And about the same condition there from Wales to Cape Beaufort, north or north-northeast winds 20 knots, 5 to 10 knots from the northeast, central, and west side, and east at 10 for the eastern coast. For tonight, cloudy skies, north slope, Arctic coast, mostly cloudy, more clearing though in the interior, and dry. Some lingering rain or snow showers possible there over the eastern interior with some neat elevation though, but whatever falls will be more miss than hit. And on the light side, increasing chance of rain for the southern panhandle. And next system pushes gale force winds into the far western Aleutians tomorrow afternoon, and stays unsettled and damp for the Alaska Peninsula, Fox Islands, and showers continue for the panhandle. And then that next front will be will actually wash out and push another round of rain in tomorrow night into Tuesday, with again showers persisting into the afternoon. Periods of light rain for Kodiak Island with that system, mostly cloudy with showers across southern Alaska, and the next short weekends pushing into the central Aleutians.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.